All right, I'm back. New video. Today we're going to talk about releasing music, labels, and what to do with them. Still working title, but if you were in my Instagram broadcast group, I put out a poll with 3 titles, and this was the one that got the first choice. So I'm going to do all 3 videos, but this is the next one. Join that if you ever want to just jump in. I kind of try to get anybody who's into this stuff involved with things that are happening or coming up. Um, and actually, before we dive in, I kind of want to do like a disclaimer thing. I should have done this, and I don't really need one, but I should have just done this in general before it kind of relates to all this content. And I want to say that as you watch this stuff, just kind of remember like there's really no black and white formula to success. There's no like Bible to success. Like everything I really do talk about is are like nuances and different things that I've seen in my own success and failures over my career. I've watched other successes and failures, and it's just like a lot of that information that I've gathered, and I apply that to my future projects, to projects I work on with my own artists, and overall advice I give, just like how this channel works. And I say all that because some of you, or very few of you, might find like a complete polar opposite road to the success, right? You might go against everything I say, and because of some unbelievable, unique talent musically or as a DJ or the way you're able to garner attention, you might find a completely different path to success. This is really designed for the people that are a bit more lost and don't have any experience. And this is a bit more of like a probability factor where a lot of this advice might just help you increase your chances of success. But obviously, once you start having that moment in success, especially like a lot more success, and growth and virality and tracks are starting to work, at some point, like a really good manager might reach out to you and get involved in your career. And that person will also, just like I, have my unique way of conveying messaging to the artists that I work with, or strategies or different things like that. Some of their stuff might align with that, but they might even have a completely different way for you to get to your path than I do. And when that person enters your career, they're going to involve all your thinking as well, hopefully. So I just say all this because, like, don't take it 100% to heart. Use this stuff. Um, there's a left and a right path, and maybe somewhere in the center you find your way. But hopefully, this stuff just helps you shorten your timeline. But if you truly believe some of the things I'm saying are wrong, find your own success. Again, I'm not the only person who's right. And these are just, like I said, these are just things that I've seen over the years where I've seen certain things that work and certain things that don't work. And I'm just trying to convey that in a way that makes sense. So, with that being said, I guess that's the disclaimer for all my content. I'll probably say some other variation of it again in the future. But let's get into this, right? So, for most of you or all of you, music is the key to your success. If you're not producing yet, really start diving into one of the softwares, Ableton, Logic. There's even like Fruity Loops and things like that. But I would say Ableton or Logic are really the route to go. Start learning it. I mean, it's going to take you a few years of hard work, like on the low end, just a few years of hard work before you're at a place where you're comfortable with your music, let alone even discovering your sound. Because early on, you're just going to make stuff. You're going to make stuff that sounds like other people's art, like other people's music. You're going to have a lot of trouble early on making music that actually fits in your own sets. So there's a big journey to that. Much more than that. It's not really a topic I dive on. I'm not a producer. I'm not really a DJ. So I'm not gonna be talking. I'm not gonna be having deep convos on that stuff. There's plenty of people on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok making this kind of content. There's tons and unlimited amount of choruses out there. If you're doing none of it right now, I mean, any of those will help you. I've said this in my other videos, like something is better than nothing. And the more you do something, the better you get, and you'll eventually find a place musically, hopefully, that you're happy with. But once you're there, you're going to want to release music. And this is something I can talk about. I'm not an A&R. I do a little bit for my own label, but I don't claim to be a great A&R. But I'm a business person. I'm into strategies, and I have my unique approach at how I look at decision making when releasing music. And one of those is like a top down approach. And I mean, let's before I even get into that, I mean, like, you're always gonna wanna release at the biggest, best place, right? That's the ultimate goal. Very if you haven't put any music out and you have, like, next to nothing following, I mean, realistically, I wouldn't even bother with the big labels yet, because unless you're friends with somebody who runs the label, the A&R person, the big DJ that owns that label, whatever, unless you have like a really personal relationship and you're going to be able to get the music directly in their hands to like at least give you a shot, realistically, I mean, with no following, no track record, they're not gonna take a huge gamble on you. I mean, on the low end, it costs them a few $100s to release some music, just from artwork designs and different things like that, even if they don't even invest any money in music. So, I mean, they're really everybody's looking for a way to at least recoup the bare minimum costs. Eighth or ninth release on Humans Alike now, including VAs, and I mean the label's in a total financial loss. I'm not that concerned with it because our events pay the bills, and we've just always wanted to have a label. At some point, I imagine it might be profitable, but just at that level, it's at a total loss. I don't mind it. I'm enjoying that process so far. Um, and 99% of labels, I'm pretty sure don't even make money. There's only a handful that actually do. But what they do is they help the people who own it. It helps elevate their career. It helps give them a platform to develop artists and keep those artists underneath them, and that ultimately helps their career. And I'll actually have a video at some point on when you should consider having a label. Um, the short answer on that right now, if you're watching this video, I would actually say don't even think about opening a label unless you're like mind blowing at managing your time, marketing. You have like some financial, you have some finances to be able to maintain this, because it can get costly even at the lowest level. But realistically, if you're already struggling to get your own music out, if you're struggling to market or do content for your personal career, adding a second thing that you have to do all that stuff to is just going to make it harder, and it's probably going to take energy away from your main artist brand, which is what you should be focusing on if you're not able to put that stuff out correctly. Um, so don't double up on something that you're already struggling to do is essentially what I'm saying. So let's get into it. Your career is gonna have the success of your career is gonna be based on all the decisions you make, on the quality of the music you release, where you put it out, and the decisions that you make are gonna help that essentially. Um, when I say, and I'm gonna kind of just go into this top-down approach, even though that might not apply to some of you today, just so you have an understanding, right? So there's three types of labels that I consider working with when I want to release music, right? One is like a top tier label, like a major, right? Which is like Sony, Atlantic, there's a bunch of them. But these labels, right? These that are going to be more money deals usually. You've already probably had some success, so because of that, these kind of conversations are happening. They're usually money deals up front. They come with like marketing budgets, like big marketing budgets, and these are the types of deals where you're going to get more mainstream success, right? And though some people might be anti-mainstream, trust me, this career doesn't last forever. When the moments come where you can get like a bigger payday, really consider them. And at that point, you're gonna have a manager, and take whatever they say to heart on that, right? So that's like your number one, the money deal. Um, that's probably like at the very top, right? The next the next approach I like to look at, and this is probably the most common route I like to go with artists, which is I like to look for labels that are doing things other than releasing music. Ideally events, right? Like the big labels have events in the big venues in Ibiza, in Miami, New York, so on and so forth. And maybe getting a release with one of them can can lead to some events, because once you start playing a few of these branded events, especially the more well-known ones, all the other promoters in the world are kind of paying attention to those lineups, and they'll see, oh wow, this brand just booked, Solid Grooves just booked XYZ, Paradise just booked XYZ, whichever brand it might be. And from that, promoters start to think like, all right, this person has something going on, let me try to book them. And usually you get this like snowball effect to your career. And then from there, the decisions you make will determine if you keep getting rebooked or not. So that's kind of like the number two, which I'd actually probably say is really my number one, because very few really get to have the major label conversation. And then I guess if that's not happening, then you'd probably go to like a second tier, which is just labels that are highly respected, cool labels, maybe like a friend's label if you're very early in your career. And then if none of those are happening, maybe you just do a self-release thing, because if you're not going to get if there's not a chance that you may be getting booked on something, if the labels really don't have the budgets to market your music or the platform or the audience, then I would say maybe going like an independent route, because at least you get to keep 100%. But if any of you are here and you really haven't done much, I mean, back to my doing something is better than nothing. Early on, just get music out there anywhere. It's not going to succeed. Don't be thinking about money yet. The money will come. Just get stuff out there and then constantly try to one up those decisions, right? So maybe your first label is a practically unknown label, and then you go with like a slightly more known label in your market or some friends that are doing cool things. And then from there, you just keep trying to one up, and ultimately, hopefully, your music aligns with a label that might be able to add more value. Whether it's strong, they have a huge audience, so just by having a release on that label, you're going to get a lot of sales and streams and hopefully new followers and fans and all that stuff, or they're doing the events and all that stuff like I talked about earlier. Um, think about the long-term benefits, especially, right? Like I said, future gigs is going to be really important. What are the labels that, and then also another approach is just like, what are the labels that your peers are looking at? Like the DJs that you're willing to go to a club and see, and those fans that are out there in the crowd that maybe musically align with the stuff you want to do. What are the 10, 15 labels that those kids are talking about today, right? And I'm not gonna really go and start naming labels for you all. Each of you probably have your own unique sound. The faster you figure, like truly in your heart, figure out that sound and understand those labels, the better your career is gonna go, because a lot of time people will write me with a record and they're like, hey, can you send this to so and so? I think this is a perfect fit for their label. And I listen to it and I'm just like, oh wow, I mean, this doesn't sound like anything they've ever released. But in that person's head, they've looked up to this label for so long that they just want music on there, and they're almost clouded by what they're making. They're very I guess the word would be like delusional. They're a little delusional on where their music actually sits, and it doesn't really align with that label. But because it's a brand that they've had stuck in their head on this like trophy cabinet, they just want to get it, and they really haven't they don't really have the right music that aligns with it. And to add to that, just because there's a label you want or a artist you aspire to, if your music doesn't actually align with them, um, and you're making music you really like, maybe let that thing go and just be like, you know what, I'm making my own unique thing and I'm gonna find where that goes, right? Versus just trying to be like another copycat just because you want to be on this specific brand, just because all your DJs that are around you think that that's a cool brand. And actually to add to that, I'll almost say that there's almost nothing more detrimental to your career than trying to oppress the small DJs around you, and I don't mean to insult them by saying small, but everybody at this if you're watching this video, probably most of you are at a smaller level, right? And trying to impress a bunch of people that haven't done the things or the goals or have reached the mountaintops that you want to reach is only going to slow you down. Like, let go of their opinions. I mean, like, it's good to hear your peers' opinion, but just don't try to impress them. Like, your goal is to write down whatever your goals are, and then your goals are to get those goals done, to figure out the steps to get those done, even if a few people around you think that that stuff's uncool. I could promise you, years from now, the last thing you'll be thinking about is like, I'm so glad I made this other local DJ like impressed by what I'm doing. And I've seen so many careers go down the drain by artists trying to impress other artists. The only people you actually need to impress or whoever you want your fans to be. And your fans can actually be whoever you want. You can go after the biggest possible audience or the smallest niche, but the second you understand who your fan base are, that's who you should be trying to impress and find more of. Like, where do these fans exist? What labels are they listening to? What platforms are they on? And I'm going to figure out how to reach them, right? And that should be your goal. And then as for the independent thing, I mean, there's a lot of distribution platforms that offer self-release. Really research those. I've heard like horror stories. Again, maybe they don't pay you out. I mean, early on, if especially if you haven't had any releases yet, the only thing you should care about is just getting music out. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna drink some water as always. And then other than that, I mean, that's kind of my overall approach, right? It's those three things. Number one, if your music is viable enough for majors, if you've already made some momentum and you've strong streaming numbers and strong sales on like platforms like Beatport and TrackSource, maybe and your music is, I guess, a slightly more mainstream. A major conversation is great. It gives you a bigger platform. There's usually like different kinds of money talks, just depending on where you're at. And then like I said, number two, which is probably most of your number one, is, these big labels that are doing big things around the world. They're able to offer more than just distribution. And that can elevate your career to touring gigs, which is great because that's where the real money is gonna be, most of your career, unless you're making mainstream music. And then, the independent route. So again, just be very careful with the independent route. Remember, if you're struggling already with content, if you're struggling already with marketing and promo, going independent just means that this entire thing falls on you. So if you're gonna do some independent stuff or you are gonna go and start your own label, just really deep dive on how to put this stuff out correctly, how to protect it, how to market it, promo it, and do all these things because now that falls on you. And keeping 100% of a record that you have no idea how to put out to the world correctly, it doesn't help your career either. And then lastly is the contracts. I mean, early on, small labels are all using relatively one of a few templates that kind of circulate. But I mean, really read them correctly. If you're ever doing a major deal with money or multi-track commitments, or I mean, if you have the funds to get a lawyer, you should always consider that. But especially if you're doing anything that's more than like a single or an EP or a VA release, like something that has some type of long-term commitment, something that might have publishing terms in there, something that might have like options in there. Like, I mean, I can't stress this enough. Like, get a really good lawyer. The 500 to a grand that it's probably going to cost you, maybe you find someone cheaper, is going to save you like tons of headache because these long-term commitments are designed in ways where sometimes you can get trapped in them for years, right? And it could be great, but it could also be very bad. And when it's bad, you're kind of stuck in that situation until you fulfill those commitments. And even sometimes if you fulfill those commitments, there's still things where you just can't go and do anything else for a while, and they call it like being shelved. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and there's a lot of things that can go great. Like, I'm not trying to scare you, but if you're doing a higher level agreement, like term, like, I cannot stress this enough. Get a lawyer. Don't use a lawyer that the label recommends. Like, find your own, because the lawyer that the label recommends wants to do right by the label because they want more recommendations, right? So make sure you always get someone that's going to protect you. Same thing when you get a manager. If there's an agreement in place, which you don't really need one, but some managers like to require them. Same thing there, and I'll do a video on that. But also get your own lawyer to review that agreement, and then once that's been done and that person is your manager, they're probably going to recommend lawyers for different things in the future. But at that point, you've kind of already protected yourself with the initial agreement with the lawyer, and you should be at a trust factor with your manager to be able to trust their guidance there, right? Because they're on your team, not the other team, right? So you always want to trust your team. You always want to be skeptical of the other team. Even when they're doing something correct and they have all the best intention, it's still just kind of better to protect yourself. And then lastly, I guess like all those things matter. Like those are more like business way of thinking of like strategy on what's the best choice to make to help my career. But with all that being said, I mean, first and foremost, you really want to find labels that align with your music, that are doing things that you think are cool or you think are like the way you want stuff going out. And that way you get the correct type of fan, right? No matter how small or big. All of you have different goals. Some of you are looking for the biggest success with the biggest paydays, and that's fine. And some of you want to go like the most niche route possible, and that's fine too. And the faster you understand where you are on that spectrum, the easier it is to make decisions to get there, right? And I mean that's really it, right? Like it's just making correct decisions, always thinking out like what will this decision parlay into? What is the pros and cons? And what's going to ultimately, like everything else I always talk about, what is going to be what is the best decision for my music, for my career that's going to shorten my timeline to success, right? And again, there's a major conversation. There's the labels that are just doing tons of great things from events, and maybe they're in Web3 or something else that just piques your interest. And then, early on in your career, for most of you, just get stuff out that musically aligns with you. Learn that process of releasing music. Your first few records are probably not going to, I mean, more than your first few records are probably not going to do anything crazy unless you're just unbelievably talented and really good at content and marketing. But for most of you, this part's going to be a struggle. And the more you release, the more consistent you release, you're going to just like every track you make in Ableton or whatever software you use will slightly get better because you just get better at the software, at finding samples or finding sounds or tuning things or whatever the lingo is for all that stuff, but you just get better at it. The same thing with your content, the same thing with the way you promote your music and your shows and all these different things. So the more you do it early, the better you're going to get. That way, when your music is at a point where you're like really happy with it, you've now have maybe released 10, 20, 30 records. You've seen what things work and what things don't, and you're going to be able to apply all that to a record you're actually really excited about. And that record, because of all that, because of all those attempts and successes of failures of releasing music, the records that you really are excited about that might actually change the trajectory of your career are going to have a better chance at being successful. So again, as always, be consistent, do more, execute, put in the work, and um, and I think you're going to see the results you want. So as always, I hope this was helpful to some of you. For those of you who might disagree or think I left something out, please comment below. And I'm excited to hear your success stories. See you on the next video.